Former gang members, what moment made you realize you needed to get out? When I had my first daughter, I thought to myself, I can't live this life no more. So I went to our hideout to speak with the gang leader, hoping he'd understand and give me permission to leave. I told him that I loved my daughter and wanted her to live a normal life. My own father was never there and I would make sure my daughter never experienced that. However, our leader said the only way I'm leaving is in a casket. He said I knew too much about what goes on behind the scenes, and he can't just let me leave the gang. I pleaded with him, tried to show him that my loyalty to the gang was solid, but nothing worked. Even though I had never gone against him before, this time was different. I was determined to leave this life behind for my daughter, and I would escape no matter what, but I made a crucial mistake, which was saying goodbye. I had spent years alongside these guys, so I decided to give one last hug to my fellow gang members. The mistake was that my goodbye hugs were a bit too strong, and revealed my intentions. After I got into my car and drove out of the neighborhood, I noticed a car following me. They were two of the gang's lieutenants, so I figured it's a coincidence, and they're just going home. It was still a little weird though, so I took a few unusual turns to see their true intentions. To my surprise, they were still following me. Panic began setting in. I knew they were either going to unalive me or give me a near-death beating. I started weaving through traffic and sped to twice the speed limit in an effort to lose them. But they remained on my tail like a wolf chasing its prey. Because I was so focused on them, I made a wrong turn and drove into a dead end. There was nowhere to go and I was cornered like a rat. I jumped out of the car and started running, but these two lieutenants were former Marines, and quickly surrounded me. I begged them to let me go. All I wanted was to be a good father for my daughter. But was this really how it was all going to end? They smiled, and for a second I thought they were going to give me a hug and let me go in the spirit of brotherhood. The next thing I knew, I felt a sharp pain in between my ribs and collapsed onto the ground. I had been stabbed. They said something about loyalty to the gang and ruthlessly yanked the knife out, leaving me to bleed to death. I was lying in a pool of blood, screaming for help. The people in this neighborhood only opened their doors to look, and then closed them back up. They saw how I looked, and decided they didn't want to get involved in gang violence. Thankfully someone did call the cops, because I passed out and woke up the next day in a hospital, barely holding on to my life. That day, I decided to cherish every single moment with my family. I moved states with my wife and daughter, and slowly rebuilt my life. I found peace in fatherhood and a normal job. Until 6 years later, when my old life decided to pay me a small visit. I was sitting at a cafe when I felt a tap on my shoulder. My heart skipped a beat, because it was the kind of tap we did in the underworld to let someone know we are not a cop. I turned around, and sure enough an old gang member was standing there. Fear gripped my heart as I realized we were almost alone in the cafe, and that my old boss had finally tracked me down. But before I did something drastic, the old man smiled and said that he's out too. He didn't want there to be any hostility, and just stopped by for a chat. We ordered some coffee and began reminiscing. Turns out, he also had a child of his own. Twins actually. I joked about how everyone knew he would have more than one kid because he was never careful. He retorted by saying that I looked like a retired high school teacher. It was an unexpected moment of banter, but it was peaceful. Eventually the time came for me to go home to my family. I asked for his number, hoping to stay in touch and maybe become friends, but he declined. He said it's better if we move on, and think of this meeting as a sign that we both successfully escaped that life.